inside the 10. Carr tips it in and it's Ward. He spins into the end zone for the touchdown. Watching greatness on one end in LeBron. There's a dude with 35 in white getting it done defensively and then offense taking over the fight. Mama, there goes that man.
They have shared a brilliant championship battle, but the championship can only be won by one, and it's going Dutch in 2021. Max Verstappen, for the first time ever, is champion of the world.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the unprepared edition of the Waterboy Experience. Usually, each and every week, I try to write out a big, long intro that really has no meaning behind it, but this week I got nothing. But allow me to introduce the most unprepared man in the universe, Mr. Jason Shaddix. Jason, how are you, man?
Now, I'm not going to say I'm the most unprepared person in the universe, but I like to wing stuff, and I usually wing stuff all the time. That's how I went through high school, just winging everything. And for this episode, I am winging it because I have no script today. I have no news. I have nothing because there was really nothing interesting going on in the world of motorsport. And because it's the summer break for Formula One, and it's the summer break for me, and it's all on you, Jack.
Well, I mean, it's like a Twilight Zone episode. You have no notes. I have notes. I have 2 pages worth of notes. Of course, I write big, but you get the point. So what's going on? Why are we like this?
Well, mostly because there's no news right now going on in the world of motorsport that's actually entertaining for most people. There's no big sport other than NASCAR. And I'll be perfectly honest, I'm not a fan of NASCAR. I think it's absolutely boring. But I did watch part of the Watkins-Glen race this past Sunday, mostly for Kimi Räikkönen. Well, only for Kimi Räikkönen. And it only lasted for 41 laps, 43, 44, something like that.
I mean, what happened? What happened to him? Did he just DNF or?
Yes. All right. So I'm gonna give So I'm gonna give you a little bit of background about it. So Kimi Räikkönen was given special permission by NASCAR to actually try out the Gen 5 cars. Now, because of this being a unique occasion, he didn't actually test the car out a few weeks ago with Trackhouse, who's the team he's racing with. Instead, it was another team that NASCAR hired, and it was a different car because he was driving a, quote, Camaro in the race. It's not a fucking
It's
Camaro.
like a stock Camaro, I guess.
There's nothing.
The engine in its basis is like a Camaro, I guess.
They're not.
I don't know.
They're not.
Well, why do they call them Camaros? Like, you have Camaros and you have like Challengers for Dodge, and why do they call them that?
How the fuck do I know?
You're right. I should have known. You're unprepared. I'm guessing it's got something to do with like promoting the actual vehicle, you know?
It's probably because of where it was designed or built or something like that they took the name. It's going to be a Camaro.
They don't even use like the same engine or the same frame on the inside as the actual car, and it resembles nothing like the actual Camaro. Or
the only thing that's similar to the Camaro is the front of it. It looks like
vaguely,
a Camaro.
yeah.
Vaguely looks like a Camaro, but yeah, those cars are anything but stock. Those chassis are completely made to regulation. The engines are to regulation. Everything's to regulation, and none of it is something that you'll find in a Camaro or a Mustang or a Toyota Camry as they have in NASCAR. They're all just unique. I want to say prototype looking cars, but they just call them stock cars. Now, back in the day, they were actual stock cars. Like, a company has to make 500 cars in order to be qualified for NASCAR. So, like, when the Dodge Challenger Daytona was created, they had to make 500 legal cars for, sale and all that in order to qualify the car to be a NASCAR. So what you saw in NASCAR is what you actually got in the real life, except obviously there were some differences where, like, they took out the seats and all that to put some more safety features on there, and the tire were different. But overall, same chassis, same engine, and that's how they used to do it. And the Daytona was created for NASCAR, and the selling of that car was just coincidence. Because, well, it was not coincidence, but it was because they needed to because of the NASCAR regulations.
Well, and I mean, it's also like nowadays it's got to be easy to make the car sort of resemble a Camaro or a Mustang or whatever, because all you have to do is just put stickers on the front that look like the headlights. Because remember, in the words of Lightning McQueen, race cars don't need headlights because the track is always lit. Well, so is my brother, but he still needs headlights. The best jokes in a Pixar movie ever. That just hit.
Definitely. Yes. Well, I mean, some racing cars do need headlights. Most notably, those that do endurance races, like the 24 Hours of Le Mans.
Yeah, like if you're racing on an unlit track on one of those long tracks that just like, I guess more like a street track at night, you might need headlights. But like in those big oval racetrack stadiums like Talladega or Daytona, you know, the whole track, you know, like I said, the whole track is lit and you don't really need them.
Yeah. In Formula One, we do have some night races. We saw it at Bahrain, the track's all lit up and all that. And it does look cool, especially at the Singapore Grand Prix, which we should be able to see this year, barring any COVID outbreaks. But going back to NASCAR and back to Kimi Räikkönen, so he was allowed to test the Gen 5 car, special permission, only was allowed to do a few laps so he can get used to the cars. Now, there's a huge difference between NASCAR and Formula One cars. The biggest difference, obviously, is the downforce. NASCARs, they have downforce. They just have so little downforce compared to a Formula One car that it's completely night and day. Brakes are different as well. Formula One has probably some of the best brakes out there. But yeah, that's NASCAR. That's what Kimi did. And he qualified, I think, 23rd. And here's an interesting bit. He got all the way into P9 during the race. And he was actually holding off Chase Elliott, and he was making Chase Elliott fight for that position right there.
And I mean, Chase Elliott's one of the best out there, one of the front runners to win the NASCAR championship this year. And I think he's won several more before that. So that's impressive. And it's good to see that he still has it.
Yeah, the Iceman still has it. He still got it in there. And you are right. He is the favorite one to win the NASCAR Cup Championship Series, whatever it's called. Obviously, though, it's a shitty format because it doesn't matter how many races you win in the regular season. All it matters is in the playoffs, which I think is completely idiotic. And a lot of fans, can't agree with me that it's a stupid format. And they're always changing it every few years. They're like the French government. They can't decide what government they are, so they change it every few years.
Yeah, NASCAR is just one of those things. It gets really stagnant very quickly. So they have to constantly keep changing it and find new ways to kind of revamp it and try to get more viewers interested in this new system that they're using.
But the thing is, everything they do is pushing back fans. A lot of people have stopped watching NASCAR. And, some people will say, oh, well, it's because, of streaming. People are cutting the cord and all that. Yes, that is true. But historically, the majority of people who watch NASCARs are from the South. And let's be honest, we do not have the best internet connection out there. It's pretty shitty. Yeah, I once saw a girl and she was telling me that where she lived, because she didn't live in the city. She lived in
I hate it when your stories start with, I once saw a girl, this one girl one time. It never ends well.
Well, this one, she's just telling me how they have internet, but it's so slow you can't even watch videos on it. And she was only like 2 miles, no, maybe not 2 miles, maybe like 5-8 miles away from where I live. And I have perfect internet, I have Xfinity and all that, and I actually got good internet and I was able to stream stuff. She couldn't, and I'm like, well, that's kind of ridiculous if you think about it. But so anyway, enough of that tangent.
But with NASCAR, like even with streaming, like you don't hear people getting excited about NASCAR anymore. You don't hear guys, it used to be like one of the things that you would sit around the water cooler and talk about, or one of the things you have the guys over, you drink a few beers and you watch the NASCAR race. But one of the biggest problems for me, why I can't sit through them, is they're just so painfully long, and it's the same thing over and over and over again. And odds are, if you start in P1, it's probably going to be like that for the rest of the race. And it doesn't really pick up until the last few laps, if it picks up at all.
Yeah, and one of the things they do in NASCAR, and I think this has been proven, but if it hasn't been proven, it's widely known, is that the way NASCAR designs the car nowadays, like I said, there's parameters you can work on the cars and you can design certain stuff on it, but there's certain things that NASCAR does to make the cars more entertaining per se. Formula One does it. Pretty much everyone does it. Formula One did it in order for them to have closer racing, which we've seen this year. We've seen a lot of close racing. In NASCAR, what they do is they make it more likely for those cars to crash, so they can see that huge spectacle of fireball or 10 cars crashing out, and it's like back then, back in like 10 years, well, not 10 years ago, 20 years ago in the early 2000s, those crashes could still be life threatening. But right now, those crashes are all, I don't want to say choreographed, but they're perfectly safe. There's a very, very low chance of them getting hurt, which is a good thing. But at the same time, they're trying to manufacture what made NASCAR great back in the day, and it's not working. NASCAR is boring, like you said. It's the same thing all over again. How many times can you sit there and watch a car going in circles? Like, at least with a Formula One, they're going through the tracks in different areas and all that, making turns and all that, which to me, I find that to be interesting because it really tests a driver's driving ability. Because, if you're fighting next to somebody, and we saw this with Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton, when they were going into corners, who's going to be the one to brake earlier? And sometimes they didn't brake at all. And, we have the Monza incident where Max went over the top of Lewis's car, which you're not going to see that in NASCAR because he's making a left turn. He's making another left turn.
That's all it is. It's just 4 left turns, and that's it.
I can at least say this. Watching Glenn's was actually quite entertaining compared to all the other NASCAR races because this is an actual circuit. It's not, there's some parts where it's like a long straight, but you actually have turns in this one, lefts, rights, and all that. So that was interesting, and that's why Kimi was doing so well, is because he has more experience in a regular track than NASCAR drivers do because they're going in circles. This time, they're not going in circles. It was entertaining as hell. Obviously, Kimi, as I said earlier, I do believe I said this earlier. I don't know. We've been drinking. But I said Kimi Räikkönen crashed out on lap 44, 43 because there was a bunch of cars on the left side and he got clipped in, tire got hit, his steering broke, and then he hit the barricade, and then he was out. But he was doing pretty well for somebody who's only had a handful of laps under his belt in NASCAR. But yeah, that was race. I think Chase Elliott won. I don't know if he won or not. I didn't fucking bother to after Kimi was out. I'm like, well, now's my time to leave. But yeah, that was NASCAR.
Is Kimi gonna stick with it, or was this a one-time thing?
I think this was a one-time thing because it was like a international invitational, and I think Trackhouse is the first team to do this, and they're planning on doing more throughout the next few years. But I mean, Kimi did retire because he said, "Well, I kind of want to be with my family."
Right. Which, I mean, it sucks because like you saw him on that track, he still got it, and I don't think it would take him very long to still get it in Formula One. I'm not saying. I'm just saying I would like to see him, but I wouldn't want him to be like Sebastian Vettel was before he retired. You know what I mean? Not talking bad about Sebastian Vettel, but he didn't have his best past couple years.
Yeah, and I mean, unfortunately, that's kind of like what happened to Kimi Räikkönen because in 2018, he was racing with Ferrari, and he did win a few races. I think that's the year that he won his last ever race in Austin, Texas, and it was a great race. He held off Hamilton, but after that, Ferrari said, "All right, Kimi, we're going to change you out. You are going to take the place of Charles Leclerc in Alfa Romeo, and Charles Leclerc is coming into Ferrari." And then back then, Alfa Romeo really wasn't that great, and he was just in the back all the time. And we saw little moments of Kimi, of the old Kimi. And, he's an old dog, but he knew how to race. He still has it. But, the season ended, and I was hoping Kimi would stay one more year, but he left. So, Iceman went out.
Iceman went out with a bang, quite literally. But no, I mean, that was good for him. And again, it was really nice to see him in a car again in some capacity.
Well, that was my NASCAR and my bit in this podcast for the day. If you heard that, that was the little kitty cat or mascot. But there was no Formula One news, and I didn't really want to look up any nondescript motorsport news because there's nothing really interesting going on today. I think there was a MotoGP race. Don't know who won. Don't really care. This is my summer break. But next week, I will be back with the Belgium Grand Prix. So let's look forward to that.
So you just get to take time off while I grind and I take notes. I have to do the work here.
Huh. Funny. I did that for 15 weeks. What have you been doing?
I'm sitting here listening to your nondescript motorsports. It's been quite lovely. I've gotten to take a vacation, and now we're getting into the fall. We're getting into the thick of it with football, and now it's my turn to well, it's your turn to hold this dog's head. Now it's my turn to fuck it.
Well, to be perfectly fair, I have 3 races in a row to cover while the start of the NFL season starts. And then we have the rest of the Formula One season, which will end on the beginning of Thanksgiving week. So,
Which I won't be there for because I'm going on a vacation.
yeah, the rat bastard is going to Disney World and he's not taking me. He's taking his girlfriend with him instead. I'm so jealous.
Well, it's a much deserved treat. But do you just want me to go ahead and just get into NFL? Do you really have nothing else? Are you ribbing me here?
I have nothing else. I took no notes. I just don't care right now. I'm enjoying my little bit of freedom that I have before we really start grinding because like I said,
well, sit down and shut up and let's get into the NFL. This was the NFL preseason week 3. I'm going to start off with Raiders versus Dolphins. The Raiders beat the Dolphins 15-3, and it was not a very pretty game. I will say that. Raiders led the whole game in rushing yards. We had 144. Once again, our rushing offense looks pretty solid. We led the total time of possession with 33 minutes and 9 seconds. Not too bad. I like when we control the game like that, and we have been doing that for the past few years. I think that's one of our secrets. The one thing I don't like at all, total sacks allowed, the Raiders allowed 4 sacks. We cannot do that, especially because the Dolphins' defensive line, it's not bad, but it's not the best. But when we go up against like the Los Angeles Rams, Los Angeles Chargers, even the Chiefs, it's going to be tough. And I don't like seeing 4 sacks allowed against a Dolphins defense.
to be fair, like you said, it's just the preseason. It really doesn't matter.
It is. I know it's just the preseason, but I still don't like that because I don't know if it's the players. I don't know if it's the scheme. I don't know what it is. It's a little concerning to me, that number. I'm going to give the Dolphins some pointers, though. They threw the ball very, very well. They had 303 total passing yards, and they played a fairly good game. It was a bad game, but they put up some competition, and they gave us a fight. And I got to give it to that defensive line. They did pretty good. But overall, Raiders, Dolphins, 15-13, and I'm still excited to see what the Raiders can do. I'm just hoping, because we did not have nearly as many passing yards as the Dolphins did. You know, I talked about last week how we built an identity around ourselves before the season even started about how we were probably going to be the number one passing offense. And I really need that passing number to go up. So overall, good game or bad game, whatever you want to say. And we're going to move on from there.
Well, actually, can I say a little something?
Oh, moving on. I'm kidding. What do you want to say?
So one of our friends, Grayson, lives in Florida. I think he lives near Miami or in Miami. And he actually went to the Dolphins versus the Raiders game because it was close to home and all that. And I asked him, "Oh, how was the game?" And he was like, "Dude, it absolutely fucking sucked." Well, he didn't say fucking.
It was ugly.
Yeah, he said it was a bad game. And like, it's not just because he was rooting for the hometown team. He said it's just a bad game in general. Like, it was a boring game. And funny enough, on Instagram, he posted it on his story, a picture of him sitting at the stadium and all that. And then the next one was because the Miami Grand Prix takes place partially in the parking lot of the Dolphin Stadium. He was actually playing the Formula One game 2022 with the racing setup and all that with Fanatec wheel and all that because they're still advertising the Miami Grand Prix for next year. And I'm like, that would be an interesting game to go to because Davis can watch the Raiders play and I'm going to be playing Formula One and having a better time.
That game, you probably would have had a better time because I couldn't sit there and watch my quarterback get sacked 4 times, especially if it was Derek Carr. Now, it wasn't Derek Carr this week, but still.
Either way, how promising do you think it looks for them?
I'm still optimistic because it is just the preseason, and I have to tell myself that sometimes. I have to be like, it's just the preseason. We'll get it figured out. And I mean, we're 3-0 in the preseason. That's not bad.
But it's the preseason.
again, it's the preseason. We don't know how much this will reflect the actual team's performance during the regular season. I'm still optimistic, though. But I'm looking at those games against guys like the Rams and the Chargers, and I'm just kind of looking at them at the corner of my eye and being like, I'm a little bit nervous about that. So,
Well, I mean, the first big test is going to be the first game of the season for the Raiders, which is going to be against the Chargers.
Raiders and Chargers. We pick up where we left off last season in a amazing game against the Chargers last year to close out the season. Let me read you the first 4 or 5 games here. Let me read you the first 5 games of the season here to give you a little bit of perspective how out of the gate we're going to be tested. First game of the season on September 11th is going to be Raiders versus Chargers. Week 2, September 18th, is going to be Cardinals versus the Raiders. September 25th, week 3, is Raiders versus Titans. October 2nd is going to be Broncos versus Raiders. October 10th is going to be Raiders versus Chiefs. And then the next week we play the Texans. We have a little bit of an off week. That's a little scary to me because I don't see very high odds. I'm optimistic. Don't get me wrong, but I don't see very high odds of us coming out the other side of those 5 weeks 5-0. So I'm just saying.
I mean, it's understandable. I mean, like you said, it's a stack 4 weeks, and it's going to be a tough one. But I mean, if the Raiders go 4-0, it's going to be very interesting to see how far they can go.
And then back-to-back weeks at one point on December 24th and December 8th, we play the Chargers again. And then the next week we play the Rams. So it looks tough.
That last game is going to be a fucking massacre.
I mean, it might be just like a fantastic game, and we do so well. It's a Monday night. Is it a Monday night football game? It's prime time because the game comes on at 7:15. So I'm excited for it. But at the same time, I'm a little bit nervous. I'm going to have to see how we look in the season at that point. And then we finish off the season against the Chiefs. And I really want to see how that game unfolds.
Well,
The storyline building up to that game throughout the season is going to be interesting.
Well, speaking of the Chiefs, we have some, not interesting news, but something that pissed you off, and I just groaned in annoyance. You want to tell the people what that was?
Yeah, Patrick Mahomes is now a playable character in Fortnite. Anyway, who fucking cares? Nobody. 13-year-old little kids.
Next game, let's go.
All right, next game. Lions versus Colts. 27-26 win for the Detroit Lions. You've got to be happy to hear that. They combined for a total rushing yards 174. Sacks allowed. The Colts allowed 3 sacks. That's not a very good sign, but for the Lions, that's a pretty good sign because Aiden Hutchinson actually did not play this game, but he had some other guys on that defensive line step up. So I think that that's a good sign that Aiden Hutchinson is not going to be the only one working. It's not going to be like a wagon with one horse pulling. No, these guys are pulling their weight. And like we were talking earlier, there's reports coming out about how the practices are, and basically, like, not in a bad way, but the coaches are there to guide the team. The team sets their own goals, and they know what they need to work with, and they sort of control practice to a degree. I think that's a very good sign for the Detroit Lions because these guys, not just as a group, but as a team, they want to win. And I like that.
It's definitely an impressive step up.
It's such a better, how do I put this, environment for the team to be like that, to where the guys themselves, they want to win. They want this team to get better. And they're not just influenced by money. They're influenced by their own will to win and their will to succeed.
Hopefully, this is, upper management doesn't decide to change what they're doing, because from everything we've been seeing, it's looking like it's working. We definitely have the spirit to not sound corny, but we're going to sound corny regardless. We have the spirit of a lion. We just never really used it to our full advantage. And now we do, with a great coach who believes in us and who pushes the team to be better. I'm not saying we're going to be like, oh, we're going to go to the playoffs and we're going to go win the Super Bowl. Yeah, or we're going to win our division title. No, I believe that we're going to go from the bottom of the league to the midfield. I think we're going to be a midfield team, I don't know if we're going to be one of the top teams in a few years, but at the very least, I see us being in the midfield. That team right there that, it's good, just needs to get a little bit better, needs to fix all this and that. But if every year from now on, we keep on improving from our previous year and we get, not only just better players, but, better plays and all that, I think we will be, quite a good team. And people won't be embarrassed to say, I am a Detroit Lions fan. We're going to stop being the bottom of the joke. Yeah, something like that.
The butt of the joke.
Butt of the joke.
That's
Yes,
what
I'm
you
sorry,
meant.
I'm drunk.
No, but I mean, the Lions, you might not make it to the playoffs this year. Now, next year, you might make it to the playoffs, but you might not make it to the Super Bowl next year. And you might not win a Super Bowl that year or the next year. But if you start now, you grow the foundation, and you have a bunch of young guys that will be there for a long time, that want to be there for a long time, and you can build a culture for that team, you can build an identity, and you can build a team that in the next few years could theoretically be in the Super Bowl. And a lot of people will say that's crazy to say, but it's not that crazy to say. We've seen a lot more dramatic turnarounds from other much lesser teams. I mean, the Browns went 0-16, and then the next year did a little bit better, and then the next year made it to the AFC playoffs. That was a great turnaround. And I think the way the Lions are looking right now, I think they could make a much better turnaround than the Browns did a few years ago.
Yeah, because the Browns then did another turnaround and then went back down again. And now, they hired Deshaun Watson. So they've hit rock bottom. And yeah.
But overall, I mean, it was a pretty impressive performance from the Lions. It was good from the Colts, too. I mean, this was a close game. Don't get it wrong. I was excited to see Sam Ehlinger at quarterback because I remember watching him in college, and I remember thinking, I just like his name. He played for Oklahoma State, and, he was pretty fucking good. And he finished 9 for 11 for 136 yards and threw 2 touchdowns. But the one point that I want to make about this game, the Lions had 24 first downs. Now, I know that statistically speaking in other games, that's not a lot, but I think that is what won them this game because they were able to just get the first down. Don't look for a touchdown every play. Look for a first down. Just get the first, and you're good. So, great game from the Lions, great game from the Colts, and Colts are going to be one of those top contenders in the AFC this year. I have a feeling. So, moving on. So, let's go ahead and talk about the Broncos versus the Bills. Walmart versus the Bills.
Hamilton versus the Bills.
Broncos.
Hey, that's exactly the sound that the Broncos made, and that's exactly the sound that the Mercedes made.
Exactly. Well, and the Broncos got pretty whooped here.
Pretty whooped? Son, it wasn't
Pretty
even close.
whooped.
It wasn't even fucking close.
15-42 was the loss. And
Ouch.
I want to go over a few stats here because all across the stat board, the Bills just dominated. Rushing yards, 208. Passing yards, 302. Yards per play, 9.1. That is impressive. And I also want to make mention that they allowed 0 sacks. That Bills offense might not have its starters in, but they are running on full cylinders. And as soon as you get Josh Allen in there, it's going to just look even better. When you look at the Buffalo Bills, I'm telling you right now, you're looking at Super Bowl contenders. These guys are just rolling. And as soon as that season starts, they're going to be rolling over everybody. And thank God the Raiders don't play the Bills this year.
Well, it depends on how far you guys get in the playoffs.
Well, yeah, I mean, in the playoffs, I don't know. But I'm talking about like in the regular season. Thank God we don't play them because it would be embarrassing.
I mean, we talked about this last season. The Bills were very impressive last season, ridiculously impressive, especially when you consider how bad the season started off with them, with the fans leaving halfway through the stadium. That's still...
The game was even over? Oh, yeah. I still remember that.
Exactly. And now the Bills are,
Want to know the crazy part? They ended up winning the game.
Oh, that's Bills fans for you. But yeah, it's so impressive how they've been getting better and better. And, I do believe you are right. They may be Super Bowl contenders. Definitely one of the top teams to look out for.
They are a lot like the Rams in a sense that they are one of the most complete teams all across the board, offensively and defensively. And I don't really have much to say positive about the Broncos here because it wasn't a good day. I'm not putting them down. I'm not saying the Broncos are going to suck, but I don't want to look at this and think of this as a gauge for how well they'll perform during the season.
I mean, a few months ago, we were talking about the Broncos when the draft was going on, and we were talking about how, well, you were saying that the Broncos might be a really good team. I was optimistic. I wasn't really going for they're going to be that great. I just got to wait and see. Honestly, I don't like what I'm seeing. I don't think they're going to be that great.
We'll see. I still see them as, I see the talent, and I think they're a 10-win team. I think every team, I said this last week, I've said this probably every week, I think every team in the AFC West is a 10-win team, and we could see all 4 teams in the playoffs. But don't count them out just yet. But the Bills look great.
Definitely. But let's go to the next game, why don't we?
Well, the next game was the Steelers versus the Jaguars. Steelers won 16-15. It was a pretty even game.
But I think the most important thing that came out of that game wasn't really the score or how the teams played, but how the fans acted.
Right. Well, we'll get to that in just a second. Rushing yards was pretty lopsided. The Jaguars had 97 total yards, which isn't a lot, but when you compare it to Pittsburgh's 24 rushing yards, that was something. And, the Jaguars won this game. Did they? Shit.
You keep on giving the stats, I'll look it up.
Third down conversions, Jags were actually 10 for 20. And I've always said third down's the most important down. And if you can convert that well on third down, they were 50-50, but when you compare it to the Steelers' 3 for 11, which was not very good, I feel like, if I'm right, did the Jaguars win this game?
No, the Steelers won by 1 point.
Okay, yeah.
Steelers are 2-0 and Jaguars are 0-3.
Right, okay. I was confused. I have that written down, but I was like, wait, that can't be right. But I'll say that was a good performance for the Jags going 10 for 20 because they did better than the Steelers. And I feel like also you got to give some credits to Saxonville here with holding them to just 3 third down conversions out of 11. So good job, Jags. Good job, Steelers, for pulling off this win, even though, like, statistically, it was not pretty. So we're going to talk about the fans. The fans are getting restless, Jason. Jacksonville Jaguar fans. They're insane. I don't even know how to describe it, but they're just, how would you describe it?
Oh, simple. It's Jacksonville. It's the fucking ghetto city of Florida. It's a poor man's version of Orlando and Miami. It's where you go if you're a college kid who's a fucking idiot, or if you're just a fucking idiot. I'm sorry, people of Jacksonville. I have a friend who lived in Jacksonville for a while. Still hasn't changed my mind.
Well, and I mean, basically what there was is a big old brawl broke out between the Steelers and the Jaguars. There was one guy just throwing these insane windmill haymakers, and then there was one throwing like these left-handed jabs at him, and like you can see the video, the one dude just knocked this dude the fuck out. And it's crazy. Because you saw how they reacted last week with Deshaun Watson, which granted that, that had some justification to it.
Some merit.
Right. This didn't. And I don't know who started it, whether it was Steelers or Jaguar fans, but this is unacceptable. And you don't want these kind of people at your games.
Well, I'm not going to fully agree with you in that because in soccer, football, in other parts of the world, fan violence is something that happens, and it's usually passionate fight between fans of two teams. But the thing is, this is fucking preseason. None of this matters.
That's the main reason why it's unacceptable, is this is just the preseason, and you're getting mad over a preseason game.
Hell, even if it was the first game of the season, it's still the first game of the season. It doesn't fucking matter. Now, if this was like a playoffs thing, I'm more likely to go, well, it was a heat of the moment thing. It just... words got out, things got out of control, but it's a fucking preseason game. It doesn't fucking matter. And here's the thing, Jaguar fans, and this is only for the ones who get really riled up about their team. You're one of the worst, if not the worst fucking team in the league, okay? Why are you fighting? It doesn't make any fucking sense. You are the worst team.
Hatred, bitterness, jealousy.
Maybe. But still, you're the worst fucking team in the league, okay? Quit acting like you guys, are worth shit, because that's what you're worth. Shit.
When you have something to fight for, then you can fight. But overall, I mean, like, it was a game. It was pretty even, and Steelers versus Jaguars, 16-15 Steelers. Shall I continue?
Let's move on.
Oh, God. I just saw what the next game is on the list. All right, we'll get this over with. Commanders versus the Chiefs. The Kansas City Chiefs won 24-14. It was pretty even as well, statistically. I'll give this. Both teams threw the ball very well. Commanders had 249 passing yards, and the Chiefs had 251. Patrick does tricks. Okay. He threw a ball to the, he sidearmed a ball between a guy and that, whatever. Stuff that, other people do and nobody really cares, but when Patrick Mahomes does it for whatever reason, it's a big deal. And that's all I'm really going to say. I don't have much faith in the Commanders because Carson Wentz is quarterback, and I've explained my hatred for the Chiefs. So, overall, good game, whatever. Moving on. Bengals versus the Giants finished in a 22-25 win for the Giants. Passing, Giants threw for 356 yards. That was impressive, and I liked how they moved the ball in this game. I want to take a minute, though, and he didn't play in this game. I want to take a second and talk about Joe Burrow. Where do you see him? If we put all of the quarterbacks in a line, where do you see him in that ranking?
If we're just basing it on the previous season's rankings, not rankings, official rankings, but based on how they performed last season, I would have to say he's the number 2 or 3 quarterback in the league because he got to the Super Bowl. Granted, they did lose, and it was a fuck finish.
It was a good game, though. They did a lot better than people thought they would.
Yes, and they were very close. It was a fuck finish. I don't know who decided that finish. I'm still pissed about it, but I think he's the second or third best quarterback in the league right now based on last year's season. If you're basing it on their overall career, that's different. But based on last season, I think he's second or third. Definitely the Rams are number 1 just because they won the Super Bowl and they beat out everybody. And like you said, they're a complete team.
They are. I mean, their defense is good, their offense is good, and they're good enough to go to a Super Bowl. But here's the thing. Do you see Joe Burrow winning a Super Bowl anytime soon?
It's the preseason. They don't play him.
No. Yeah, I know. But if we're comparing him to how he looked last season and trying to predict what he will look like this season, do you see it happening within the next 2-3 years?
I always said he reminds me of a young Max Verstappen, and I think maybe you are right. In the next 3-4 years, he might win a Super Bowl. But that all depends on if the team is willing to learn from their mistakes, learn from, the people who kind of got the heat on them, Eli Apple, and whoever made that decision to do the fuck finish. But yeah, I think they have a chance. I think Joe Burrow has a chance to go to the Super Bowl, definitely. Maybe it's a case where he doesn't win with the Bengals and he is traded to another team. And like Matthew Stafford, he goes and wins the Super Bowl.
I mean, if that's what it takes, then we'll see. So are you saying you don't see him winning a Super Bowl with the Bengals? Or not? That's not necessarily what you're saying. You're just saying that's a possibility.
I'm saying that's a possibility. Like I said, I can't tell right away just basing it off the preseason. I know we're gushing over the Raiders and the Lions, but realistically, we're not going to know what we're going to really look like until the first few games of the season.
Right.
Because right now, it's like in Formula One during preseason testing, we're sandbagging the cars. We're purposely going slower. We're not showing what we really got. And that's exactly what the teams are doing. And it's why, Patrick Mahomes is doing those old ridiculous tricks.
He spent all training camp just doing tricks, seeing what he can do and all that stuff. And he never really has to. There's no reason for him to use it in an actual real game scenario.
Exactly. So honestly, we're going to wait until the first week of the NFL is over with, and then we're going to decide on what we think. But here's something though. We're going to announce it fully next week, but we got something coming up for the entire NFL season. It's going to be a bit of a betting game to see who is more right.
Oh, yeah. Essentially what we're going to do.
Well, we're going to tell the people later because, we still haven't thought it off all the way.
We'll talk about it at the end of the show.
Yeah, like I said, can't really tell. if we're basing it off that game, fuck, I don't think they got a chance in hell. But if we're basing it off, on like what we will see in the season, then I'll be able to tell you, I think they have a chance at the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I'll stay optimistic about the Bengals. I still think they're a powerhouse team in the AFC, and I think they're going to be one of the top seeds this year.
But what it does say to me, though, is their backup players aren't really that great, huh?
Probably not. Okay, so let's go ahead and move on to the next game. We're going to go for Cowboys versus Chargers. Cowboys beat the Chargers 32-18, and oddly enough, the statistics didn't really say that. Chargers had 296 total yards, and they threw for 219 of those yards. The rushing game was not really on, but their passing game looked really strong. What I'm going to say that really won the Cowboys this game is their rushing attack. They had 115 yards, which is not stupendous, but I think that that's what set them aside in this game and allowed them to pull away with a 32-18 win. Rather dominant. So Chargers, I can see where Chargers didn't really take this game seriously because they did, like I said, they did throw the ball very well. I think right now they're in the testing stages of what they're doing. So I can't really tell you a whole lot about how these teams look right now, but overall, Cowboys, Chargers, 32-18. All right, last game, and ding-a-ding-a-ding-a-ding-a-ding-a-ding-a-ding-a-ding. That's the Deshaun Watson power hour bell.
Oh, I was so confused for a moment.
Yeah, that I don't have a soundboard yet. We need to invest in one of those pretty soon. But Eagles versus the Browns. It was a good game. It was very even statistically, and the Eagles won 21-20. Deshaun Watson did not play in this game. However, my boy Garner Minshew did. He was 14 for 17 for 142 yards. He did not look too shabby at all. He is not the day one starter for the Eagles. Of course, that's going to go to Jalen Hurts, who is another beast entirely. He's awesome. But Garner Minshew is pretty good. The thing is, he's just very off and on. He's very inconsistent, and I would like to see him somewhere where he could be a starter and win a lot of games because this dude's just cool. Deshaun did not play, like I mentioned earlier. J.K. Dobbs and Josh Rosen took his spot. They combined for 229 passing yards. Not that bad. And lastly, we are going to talk about the fan base of the Cleveland Browns. Browns fans, you're fucking stupid.
Some Brown fans, because remember...
Okay, I'm not... All right, you're right. That was a generalized statement. I'm not going to say that all Browns fans are bad because it is very divided amongst Cleveland Brown fans. It's a very toxic thing going on. But have you seen the pictures of the sign that went viral?
Of course, I'm the one that showed them to you.
Right. It's this jack-off dude with his little ugly snot-nosed little kid.
Oh, come on, that kid didn't do anything.
Shut up. He made his kid hold a sign that said, "Fuck them hoes, free Watson." And immediately, everyone hounded on this guy. No pun intended.
He had to delete his Twitter account.
Or Instagram or whatever he posted it on.
No, it was Twitter.
Dragging a kid into something like this is, that's a shit thing to do. Especially since he's, too young to know what's going on to understand, he doesn't know what Deshaun did. He doesn't understand what was going on. And his dad has probably, when he's like, why are people mad at Deshaun? His dad's probably like, well, because women are this and this and this. I think that's stupid. But there are a lot of Browns fans that are taking his side, and it's almost like they just don't want to acknowledge what's going on with Deshaun Watson. They don't want to see that he even came out and admitted what happened. Because in an interview, he said, and I'm paraphrasing here because I don't have the quote in front of me, but he essentially said, "I take full responsibility for my actions." That's what he said. So I don't understand how some fans, and I'm not going to, at the beginning, it was a very generalized statement, and I apologize to those Brown fans who use their left and right turn indicators and know what's going on, and they're smart enough. And there are still fans that want to get mad over the 11-game suspension and act like nothing happened. What does that say about you? You're willing to ignore this.
So, something like this, the fact that he's being accused...
Let me use an example really quick. If Max Verstappen got accused for the same thing, would there be Red Bull fans that were for keeping Max Verstappen there no matter what he did? Or Would there be Red Bull fans? Would most of them kind of be like, no, he has to go?
Max has to go if he does that. Max isn't going to do that because, Max uses his left and right turn indicator. But going back...
Aggressively, but...
Yes, very aggressively. But going back to what you said, why are these people essentially still supporting this guy after everything he did? And I'll tell you a little story. And it's something that we're going to cover in another project that we have in the works. But essentially, it comes down to people have this belief that just because they follow somebody, whether it's a team or a religion, they tend to believe stuff and tend to overlook certain aspects that aren't too nice. An example of this is a religion in Mexico. It's a Christian religion, but it's a offshoot of whatever. I don't know what it is, an offshoot of. But essentially, this guy who was the pastor, who was the leader of the church, raped, molested a bunch of underage girls, ranging from, I think, the youngest might have been 9, all the way up to women in their 30s, 40s. So he was a piece of shit, and the girls came out and said, yeah, he did this to us. The evidence pointed that, yes, he did this to them. And the thing is, all his believers are like, no, those girls are lying, and would actually attack the girls who were, like, some of them, like I said, were young girls, teenage girls who, this is a difficult thing to say, because being a teenager is a difficult phase. Now, imagine that and being raped, and everybody telling you you're a piece of shit and you're going to hell for that and that you're a fucking liar. And people, like I said, evidence is there. There's a shit ton of women. And the only reason he's in jail is, if I'm not wrong, he was tried in America, in the U.S. But people like, me and my parents, we always talked about this when we saw this on the news. We're like, how can people believe this? And to me, it's no different than, and not to get into a tangent about politics, but if you tend to follow a political movement too much, whether it's left, whether it's right, whether it's middle, whatever, if you become a fanatic of it, you will overlook any bad things. It's like,
you get to the point where you don't make any decisions for yourself on what you think. They make all the decisions about what you should think. And that is where it gets messy. And that's kind of what's happening here.
Yes, it's that same mindset. And, obviously not everybody is saying that he's innocent. The great majority of Browns fans say that, yeah, he's guilty and, he probably should be suspended for longer than 11 games. Some are asking for, kicked out of the NFL entirely. But like I said, that mindset, that kind of like tribal thing is the best way to say it, is why people defend these teams. It's why those fans in Jacksonville were fighting other fans. It's like they can't understand that, these people, they should be held to the same standard that we are, because it's like Wes said during our episode with him. He said, if I did that, if I raped molested, rape, whatever, if I did that once, I would be going to jail for the rest of my life. But this guy, because he's famous, because he's got money, he's able to walk away scot-free. One accusation for me would, and anybody else, normal people, would send us to jail for the rest of our lives, or the majority of it, but he gets to walk away scot-free, and people are believing him, and that's complete bullshit.
Right. And if it was any other player, they would probably go to jail. And if it was any other player in the NFL, even if it was a bigger name than Deshaun Watson, those same fans that are supporting Deshaun Watson right now, they wouldn't be for that guy. If this was Tom Brady we were talking about, it would not be the same at all. But because it's Deshaun Watson and they like him and he's their poster boy and he's the only hope they have for winning he's the only hope they have for winning games, they're for it. And this is the point where you have to decide, do I want to win a game or do I go with what I know is right? And you have to make sacrifices.
Exactly. And like you said, you pointed out, those fans would be angry at, if Tom Brady were to do that. He was accused of the same things. But Tom Brady's fan base, a lot of them would say, no, well, not a lot of them, but some would say, no, he's innocent. And we would be,
right, yeah.
And they would be thinking the same thing that we're thinking about them. That's the thing. It's all about this mentality people have. But at the end of the day, you don't matter to those players because you just pay for their salary. You're paying for the tickets and all that.
You pay for the tickets, you buy the merch, and really, they don't care about you. I mean, like, there's some players that do care about fans, and they love the fans and all that stuff. But I guarantee you, Deshaun Watson does not give a fuck about you.
No, and
he doesn't care about women's privacy, and, he doesn't care about massage therapists and all that stuff. Let's just say it. He doesn't care about women. Okay. He doesn't respect him because anybody that has any ounce of respect for women would not do the things that he did. I guarantee you he doesn't care about you. He doesn't care about your kid holding up a sign supporting him. He knows what he did. He knows that he should be out. He probably knows that there's a lot worse stuff that if it got out, he would indefinitely go to prison.
And here's another thing. How much do you want to bet he really doesn't care about football, and all he cares about is the money? Because unfortunately, some players are really good, naturally so good, that they get hired by the NFL, and they're just there for the money. They don't care about the sport, and I think that's the case with Deshaun Watson. If you really cared about the sport, you wouldn't do this, because you know why? Well, I won't be able.
You wouldn't put yourself at risk.
Yeah, because I wouldn't be able to play football anymore. I've trained all my life for this. Why do I want to do something to innocent women when literally, here's the thing, you have a lot of money, okay? And you're famous, you're a celebrity and all that. Trust me, there's a lot of women who would throw themselves at you willingly, okay? Or, you got a lot of money, do the Vince McMahon thing and just hire a high-end prostitute.
There you go. Boom. I mean, I don't know what Cleveland prostitutes run for these days, or even, back then Houston prostitutes run for. They're probably not the best quality. But, I mean, you're right. There's no excuse for that kind of behavior. I think this dude is
And he's got a girlfriend.
He does. He does. And I think what it comes down to is this dude is a perverted old creep. Not old, he's young, but he's a perverted creep that wants to live out his Pornhub fantasies. And he is so down bad that he is willing to just not even get consent to do it. Because that's what he wants. Because you've seen the videos of him having Mia Khalifa over at his house and all that stuff. This dude wants to live out that fantasy in his head. And I think it's sick.
And you can do it. There are certain massage parlors where you do
the NFL and be a porn star.
Yeah, where you do get a happy ending.
Exactly.
So there's no excuse for it. Like you said, he's trying to live this fucking fantasy life. And to me, it's just sickening that he doesn't get punished. And honestly, I'm just fucking tired of having to put attention to this fucker and him not be in jail. Like, he should be in fucking jail right now. He should be, at the very least, fired from the NFL, be told, get the fuck out of here. We don't want to see you. We don't care how fucking good you are. Which, let's be honest, Cleveland, he's not that great. You're not going to go to the Super Bowl.
No, he's good. He's athletic if he can stay healthy. And he's not really good at staying healthy.
I've seen him. I don't
not impressive.
It doesn't impress me. I don't think he's worth it. He's definitely not worth the bad publicity you're getting, because one thing that this affects, and for the team owners, this is very important, advertisers aren't going to want to advertise with you because you have a pervert with you. Well, I don't want to say a rapist, but because he hasn't been accused of raping someone, but a sexual assaulter, no advertiser wants to be with that.
I want to point out another fact. Colin Kaepernick. Say what you will about Colin Kaepernick, whether it was for attention or whether it was for money, or whether he was just a genuine guy about it. He stood up for what he believed, apparently, because he kneeled for Black Lives Matter and all that stuff, and he was essentially kicked out of the NFL for that. Now, he's had practices and stuff, but he's out of shape now, and he's not nearly as good as he used to be, and
he's older.
Right, and Warren Sapp even said the workout he had with the Raiders was one of the worst tryouts he's ever seen in his life. That dude couldn't make a 53-man roster.
And you even said this earlier. He's not that great to begin with. He was okay.
He was mid. He was very mid, and he made it to a Super Bowl, but, he had his years where he was really good, but towards the end of his career, he just kind of went down. But you're going to kick this guy out for standing up for racism, but you have a literal guy that has been accused of sexual assault. And I say accusations, but, they're pretty much, we know they're real. We know that there's more to it than just accusations.
Yeah, we're not talking about one or two cases, which even then you have to take serious, but we're talking about 50-plus cases, possibly 80.
Possibly. At least 24 confirmed, but that's at the very least.
Well, don't forget the 30 other ones that the Texans had to pay off.
Right. But you're going to kick Colin Kaepernick out for standing up for racism, but we can let this guy walk. We can let this guy play. Even if he's suspended for 11 games, that's still not nearly enough. He needs to be out. And like we said this before we even started, really getting into detail with all this, he needs to not play another snap in the NFL. He just doesn't need to. Because every time, what are you going to get? You're going to get that guy, and you're going to get all those fans rowdy, yelling at him. I'm pretty sure Jacksonville Jaguar fans are not going to be the only ones that are going to act like that. Wait until he goes to Buffalo. Wait until he goes to Philadelphia.
Jesus fucking Christ. Those Philly
Or
crowds.
you go to the loudest arena in the world. You go to Arrowhead Stadium, which as much as I hate the Chiefs fans are passionate. And you go into the loudest stadium in the NFL, you're not going to do very good.
And people are
That's going to get in the head.
it.
That's not just going to get in the heads of Deshaun Watson. That's going to get in the head of all the players around him. You have to sit there and ask yourself, is this affecting Deshaun or is this affecting the whole team? And I think it's affecting the whole team and the way that they look at him and the way that they respect him, because I don't think there's a lot of guys on that team that do respect him.
Making that comparison between Colin and Deshaun, we know we're going to get some people who are going to say, oh, well, that's
Probably,
different.
yeah.
He was disrespecting America. Look,
What's
I
more
understand-
important, disrespecting America or disrespecting women? In my mind, if you disrespect women, if you not just even women, you disrespect humans, and you're committing sexual assault against these people, that's a much more heinous crime than kneeling during the Pledge of Allegiance. I'm sorry. It just is.
And, regardless of, whether his intentions were good or bad or just to get some publicity, a lot of players in different sports, even the Formula One, they took a knee. And you know why? Because we have problems, okay? The same people who wanted him fired are the same people who are saying that Deshaun is innocent. Why? Because they don't care about, what's going on, honestly. And with what Colin did was a little bit more different because it was more of a broader term, not a term, but a broader thing in general. But this involves a player directly. This is important, and he shouldn't be playing. And honestly, that's the last bit I want to talk about Deshaun Watson, because I am sick and tired of talking about him and not having the resolution that we need to have. He needs to pay for his crimes.
Well, I mean, I'll make this deal with you. Unless something positive happens, unless he's like fired or something, and I'll give Browns fans some positive notes. Jacoby Brissett, he didn't play in this game because they're looking at him as being the week 1 starter. Jacoby Brissett has been looking pretty promising in practice, and the coaches feel like he's good enough to hold his own. I wouldn't be surprised if they get to the end of the 11 games, Deshaun wants to come back. But they did pretty well with Jacoby, and they don't want to risk it. And Jacoby is your starter going forward. Now, Jacoby Brissett, he's played for other teams. He started for other teams, and he hasn't been stellar. But he's had his moments where he's proven he can play. He's good. And if you want to make him your week 1 starter, and he impresses, and he does relatively well for you, why would you want to bring back Deshaun? So I feel like the next time we're talking about Deshaun Watson will be come week 11, when they have the decision to make, Deshaun or Jacoby. So that's all I've got to say about that. And that is all the stuff I have about the NFL.
We always ramble on about him. Oh, God.
Like I said, I'm making the deal with you. This will be the last segment we do unless something dramatically positive happens or something dramatically negative, like they decide to bring him back early or something. Or we get to week 11 and they have a decision to make. So good luck, Deshaun, I guess. But overall, the game itself, it was a pretty sturdy game, and Eagles did great. I told you earlier, I think Eagles are going to be a force to be reckoned with in the NFC. So, good job.
And with that, play us off, white boy.
With that, the Waterboy Experience is indefinitely done. Thank you guys for listening to this episode, and we want to remind you to please follow us on Instagram, on Twitter, and we want to go ahead and remind you that the Waterboy Experience YouTube channel is coming, where you can catch clips of episodes, and one day you'll be able to catch a Deshaun Watson omnibus, probably. Basically a collection of all of the skits, all of the conversations that we've had, just all right there, and you can listen to the whole story play out week to week to week. Do you have anything else to mention?
Don't forget that next week we are back to regular schedule with Formula One returning, and motorsports going.
Right, we'll have week 4 reviews. They're going to be light, but our main event next week will be the Formula One review.
Hopefully this time we do get a race, because last year at Spa, Francorchamps, it rained so bad that they couldn't even race.
Jeez. Well, I hope we get it.
Yep. Well, with that, sign us off.
Thank you guys for listening to this episode of the Waterboy Experience, and peace.
just outside the 10. Carr tips it in, and it's Waller. He spins into the end zone for the touchdown. Watching greatness on one end.